All right. I know we're in a different era, but those who do not know their history are doomed to repeat it. This particular piece of history, although an African emperor of Rome, which is Italy, uh, most of this story actually takes place in Great Britain and Scotland. Um, this guy really wasn't a very good guy, so I'm not going to get too much into that. What I am going to get into is his contribution to train, his contribution to later societies. I'm sorry if I'm not enunciating my words properly. I don't have any teeth. It doesn't always come out right. And right now the train is kind of bugging the hell out of me. Um, Severus was a little bit different, and as he brought along very specific, specialized uh, troops in order to battle the Scots. And they traveled all throughout Scotland. And the thing about Scotland is that you really couldn't tell a house from a hill. The whole thing was covered in grass. The whole thing. You can't see it. Um, there's a lot of rocks and things of that nature, and I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but at this point, as long as we get the story across, maybe y'all will get a little bit of interest in Scotland. Uh, or possibly even in some of the most energy efficient buildings ever constructed. That might be a little bit better turn on for you. See, if you build your house out of the land that it's on, then you're building it out of stuff that is already equipped for that terrain. If pretty much all you got to do or all you got to work with is grass and mud, you can literally build with grass and mud. If all you got is dirt, you can actually build with dirt, compacted dirt, hammered dirt, lots of stuff to do with dirt. Another thing you can do with dirt, just pile it up. As you walk on top of it and throw some more on top of it, you're going to compact every single layer as you walk on top of it. But a lot of people are like, oh, dude, that's dirty. No, it's not. Absolutely, it's not. You can finish a house however you want. And the finishing is like the exterior touches, which it's all grass, you don't have to worry about. You only have to worry about is water seepage, and we have thousands of different ways of dealing with that, do we not? We could live in the most energy efficient houses on the planet. We really could. If you look at fucking trains, if you look at what people built throughout history, the ancient peoples especially, their houses were built specifically for the terrain that they lived on. If they lived in a round house, there's a reason that it was round. If they lived on squared pylons, like some portions of France and Germany, some of those Neolithic, I want to call them encampments, but they're a little bit too big to just call an encampment. But they were built on top of lakes. What's the reason they were square? It's easier to moor. It's easier to pull up to the dock and tie off. And yeah, I mean, this was a society that by that point they were already building ships that, are, well, they're pretty big. I should apologize for lots of things. That one, this one type that I should apologize for my accusations. Um, well, nope. All right. Next subject. We're talking about the African emperor of Rome and his contribution to later castles and such. He had specialized scouting units and specialized guerrilla warfare units, and they were housed in specific buildings that were not well known to the Roman Emperor, and definitely not known before him. And later on, when you start looking at the Norman castles, you notice that they actually build that specific style. They build with those shapes on the front. As far as people's opinions go, people can have all the opinions that they want about how it was done back in the day. But really, since none of us were there back in the day, none of us knows. The way that Septimus Severus was painted, he's a pretty bad dude, but you go and you look at all of the Roman generals and Roman emperors, and they're just not nice guys. So it's not a color specific thing in the Roman Empire, and they're not picking on him in specifically because of the color of his skin. See, the Roman Empire was far less well, their beliefs were according to culture, and they believed the Egyptians and the Greeks both to be cultured. At the time, the Egyptians were under the reign of Cleopatra's brother, and this is Cleopatra the Seventh. She was, whenever people say Cleopatra, they're talking about Cleopatra the Seventh, and she's the one that supposedly seduced Julius Caesar, later Marcus Antony, and Marcus Antony, he lost a battle at sea, the Battle of Actium, and because of the loss of that battle, he and Cleopatra had to flee the battle, and they both committed suicide. There's your Romeo and Juliet, by the way. And the two armies were basically controlled by two completely different types of men. One of them was Marcus Antony, who is one of Caesar's greatest generals. The other was Octavian, and Octavian never served in the military. He was basically a politician. And a lot of the stuff that he knew how to do was how to manipulate the masses, especially the masses of Rome. And he got to hang out in Rome while Marcus Antony had to go fight some of the toughest fight in the world. And well, he went up against a tough opponent who had cut off his grain supplies. See, that's the free stuff that everybody gets. All right, this one, that one. There's no need to troll on here. We can have a difference of opinion. All right, so when we look at a lot of fortifications, a lot of times we have the thought that it's just a fortification. Well, no, there's domiciles within it. That doesn't matter if it's a star fort from the 1700s or if it's a modern bunker or if it's a uh, Roman marching fort, people are going to dwell there. And that's something that whenever I don't think of the walls. The walls can be made out of whatever the terrain you put me on. If you put me on a chunk of ice, yeah, I can make a nice castle out of that. I built some pretty big forts out of snow back in the day. I'm pretty good about stuff. Um, this one, you are trolling. That's exactly what you're doing. I'm not trying to be disrespectful by saying that. Expecting an apology from somebody, I get it, but you're not going to get it. All right, so getting back to it, the modern world, we tend to overlook the fact that for thousands and thousands of years, people knew how to sew their own clothes, wipe their own butts, and grow their own food. And today we've lost all that. Most of the land that's farming land is in the hands of private corporations. There aren't very many family owned farms anymore. They're just giant farm conglomerates. It's just a beautiful sight, isn't it? Train. All right. This one, I'm going to tell you something. I believe in talking to people one on one, treating them like human beings instead of going out of my way to be like that over misunderstanding. So I want you to understand that in all of these situations where I've been put in a very, very severe situation, I have to be the calm one. I have to be the collective one. I'm not allowed to have human emotions or human reactions. I have to be perfect at all points in time or I will be punished. This is how it is to be different. The other thing is, I'm not trying to be disrespectful in the least bit, but this is not the time nor the place for it. I am going to take a picture of this because I don't want to be an asshole. But I also, if I'm called a liar, I'd like to be able to point out that the things I'm saying are true, and this is something that's true. But another thing is, it's human nature. It really is. People get defensive. A lot of people that were. See, here's something that confused me through most of this. Train. This one, what you're doing right now is trolling. This one type. Calling me a troll is the lie. Not doubting what you say, but you're lying. No, that's trolling right there. I'm not interested in any sort of argument right now. I've got a specific subject I'm working on, and I'm not trying to be a jerk to anyone. There's a time and place for whatever, but you can be patient and you can talk to me like a human being instead of this. Now, one thing I can do, I can block you from my channel, and that's easy to do. It didn't used to be. I had to get some help doing that. Find something to light this damn thing with. Yes. Coffee kisses. Got what I wanted. Matches. A lot of our modern architecture today, it's meant to be fancy and pretty and huge, and it doesn't need to be. A lot of the stuff that we like to make movies about through history, we tend to ignore the most important parts. Like what heartless bastards these people were, regardless of what continent they came from. I mean, that was a tough society to live in. Do we have it nicer than that by comparison? Oh, yeah, we certainly do. Pretty much the whole world does. And I say pretty much because there are still places where there are a lot of people in every country who are slaves. Whether it's legal or not, people are going to do it. And there are things that we can do to put a stop to it. There are things that we can do to change it. And there are also things that we can do to reduce our constant reliance on the government. When you give everything to the government and then let them dole it out, they're going to dole themselves out more than they give anyone else. If we each had our own little plot of land, and there is enough land for that, without disturbing the wildlife, we could all have our own land. We really could. The problem is the expense and the fact that you work your whole life, and at the very end of your life, that's when they allow you a few years of your own retirement age at 75? Or is it 72? In either event, that's an insane amount. Look at how much you pay in and how much you get back out of it. Of course, if you already have land by that point, you know, you can make a living off of that. You could probably make a living off of it at age 30 if you had your own land and it was yours. A lot of the folks around here inherited their land, and a lot of them don't own their land anymore. A co-op owns it, and basically the way that that works is that all of the profits and everything like that goes to the co-op, and the people who used to own the place, they just live there now. It's kind of sort of theirs, but basically they just live there and run the place for the people who are actually making the money, for the people who are putting their name on the product. And we do have a few private farms around here. Most of them are very small. It's difficult. I mean, me, I just want an acre or two of land, which isn't actually that expensive in this area, but you have to buy it a quarter at a time. And by a quarter, I mean they section out a mile by a mile, and you gotta buy a quarter of that square. But with it, you can grow whatever you want on it. If I was to build out in the middle of a field, I would build it exactly like a Roman marching fort. Mostly through study of ancient buildings and ancient technologies, and also through a lot of hands-on experience. Most of the stuff that I wanted to learn, I knew I wasn't going to have the money for college, so I went and found people who knew how to do what it is that I wanted to know how to do, and I learned from them. So as far as knowing the stuff about ancient houses, that's mostly because there's still remains of it, and also because there was a lot of documentation of it. Not by the Scots, mind you. That was actually called Caledonia at the time. Also, London was started by the Romans. It was called Londonum. Um, but they did a lot of stuff that we later on kept and embellished upon. A lot of the Norman castles were actually built literally on top of Roman ruins because the foundations were still there, the stones were still there, the mortar was still in near perfect condition. I mean, you could build on top of it just like that. And there's three ways to fight a war. The first way, the most popular way, is by killing. The second way, obviously, I don't have any interest in fighting it the first way. I know that first of all, according to our Constitution, that's actually the right way to do it. But just because I love the Constitution doesn't mean that I agree that we should go kill a bunch of people. I know that according to what the general public has to say, for the most part, people are up in arms. They think that it should be okay to go out and shoot people now. Like, really? It's really that sick in the head, especially after pretending like I'm some sort of animal. I remember one day I woke up and I was looking at my posts and I was having a pretty good morning actually. I was gonna say something about it. And like the first 5 posts that I got were all from Christians posting about how they wish that the Muslims would get blown up. Somebody should nuke the Muslims and stuff like that, you know. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with these guys? This isn't Jesus. They wouldn't like it back, and I can prove it. So I made a post. I said, somebody should fucking nuke the US of A. Do I actually think the USA should be nuked? No, that would kill people. It was to prove a point. It's all right for you, but it's not all right for them. Okay for you, but it's not okay for others. No, that's not equality. That'll never be equality. We the people means we to me. Let's get on to the second way of fighting a war. That's by your way of thinking. That could be religion, political affiliation, family ties, your morals and values, which Jesus you believe in, or other deity. It don't really matter to me who you worship. What matters to me is how you treat other human beings. Now, for me, I try to treat human beings with respect. And until they have reason not to respect them, that's what they get. But then there's a point where you look at a position, such as the legionaries, which were the Roman foot soldiers, and then the praetorians, which were those foot soldiers, except within the city of Rome. They had a lot of say in the Roman Empire. You're not having a good day, this one. I do apologize, folks. I have ADOS, attention deficit oh shiny. So when the little chat thing over here moves, I try to ignore it for the most part and then go back later and read all the comments. But the Roman Empire was a pretty messed up place. They did a lot of really messed up things, and slavery there was not the same as it was in ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, if your slave wasn't healthy, you could be put to death, and there's also the fact that a slave was not your slave for their whole life. Being a slave was a sentence. Well, usually a sentence for a crime. There were different regions that did different things. The Athenians, their form of democracy and all of that was completely different from the Spartans. A lot of people like to hail the Spartans and how great they are and their warrior ethic, and they neglect the fact that most of the people within Spartan territory were slaves called helots. Most of them. Like the majority by a lot. At some points in their history, it's like 15 to 1 or more. A lot of the stuff that we have to deal with today, this isn't the first time people have gone through this. Not even close. I mean, all throughout history, we get to see this on every single continent. Well, nearly every continent. But every continent has had slaves on. Our first trips to the north and first trips to the south both involved slaves. Slaves went along. And you think to yourself, well, the British didn't have slaves when they made those trips. No, there were absolutely slaves on board. Just because they didn't belong to the British doesn't mean they weren't slaves. And that's terrible stuff. And we get to see how once we get more train, to get more towards the end of a republic, which the United States is, it's a capitalist republic, you generally enter into a cushion period where you have one ruler who basically tries to pull everything together. And then you have dictatorship after dictatorship after dictatorship. Every single monarchy in the history of the world has been a dictatorship for a reason. That dynasty became a dynasty by killing people. And this seems to be the one constant in human society. We understand killing. Please stop killing my people. Please stop killing my people. Please stop killing my people. Will you please stop killing my people? Dude, you need to stop killing my people now. Let my people go. And then it gets to the point where they shoot you for speaking out, or lock you up for speaking out, or have you branded as mentally ill for speaking out. Inject drugs into you that they have killed people with for speaking out. Transfer you out of jurisdiction for speaking out. A lot of things can be done to you. And not just to you, but to your family and your friends. Now, there's a lot of stuff that we can get butthurt about. There's a lot of stuff that I would absolutely love apologies for. I know I'm not going to get the apologies. That's why I'm not after apologies. I'm after the truth. And if I'm blunt to the point, I'm not trying to be an asshole. And if it comes across that way, well, You should hang out with me sometime. I'm different in person. There's a reason that most of these people were friends with me in person, but turned into punk asses when it comes to typing. It's because, number one, I don't understand everything that you type, especially if you don't type it in proper English. Number two, you're not going to understand everything I type, and there's too much to type, which is why I speak. There's a lot of people that I'm pissed off at that they're pissed off at me too. Now, who is it that's in the right? It doesn't matter who's in the right. It smells like fire. Well, if I look like a Thanksgiving turkey tomorrow, you know why. If we understand the world around us and the elements around us and the climate around us, it's not very difficult for us to figure out how to do these things that they want hundreds of thousands of dollars for and 40 plus years of your life. Why not go out there with a spade and a shovel? Maybe a pickaxe, depending on where you're at. If it's a lake, there's lots of trees or even dead trees around. You can make chinampas, which are artificial islands that were surrounding Mexico City when, well, before the Spaniards went in and killed everybody with diseases and guns and cruelty and more slavery. Christopher Columbus, more slavery. Problem isn't that these people have statues of themselves all over the place. It's that we are idolizing these people and creating an idol of them by putting up those statues. And we sugarcoat what those people actually did. I don't have to agree with you to fight for your rights. I don't have to agree with you or even like you to see a situation where the cops did something wrong to you and actually come forward. If we don't make a change now, if we don't work together to make a change now, we'll be damned with the kids. They're going to be in a much more screwed up situation than we are, and we're pretty screwed. We're supposedly the richest nation on earth or some crap, right? I don't know. Everybody's surviving on credit except those that don't got no credit. A lot of people are out of work, and a lot more people are becoming out of work. Now, you can put a flip side on it, a positive attitude on it. You go, oh, well, you know, 2,500 people just lost their jobs. Train! I said train. Well, you see how easy it was to break my concentration? The fire is tended, by the way. I just seen the guy who's tending it. It's good. Um, when we look at the Native Americans, people generally think of teepees all the time, teepees being taken and dragged from here to there and everywhere and in between, and not so much. There were permanent dwellings all over the United States. I mean, we had Sausy. We had, well, you know about the Pueblo, right? And the Kachina dolls. You should probably look those up if you don't know. Kachina. If you look at those, you can learn a lot about Native American culture just from those, because that's the Southwest version of a totem. Where are totems from? Well, there are totems that are found on the East Coast, but the most decorative totems are all on the West Coast. And in the West Coast, they didn't live in teepees and they didn't live in roundhouses like many of them on the East Coast did, or dugouts like a lot of people in this area did. They dug down into the ground part of the way and built on top of it. The way they did it in the Pacific Northwest, that's Washington State and such, is they built longhouses. Same, almost same design as Vikings. Very cool, right? The Vikings didn't hit the West Coast, they hit the East Coast. So what are those longhouses doing there? Well, they didn't just live in teepees. These houses, these construction methods, these things that were built by the Romans were built here in the United States before we were ever here. They were built in South America and Central America. Pyramids. There are more pyramids in Mexico per square mile than anywhere else in the world, and we just forget about that. Meanwhile, these stone structures are put together just as precisely, just as perfectly as the Great Pyramids. And I'm not saying there's some alien connection or anything of that nature. We can see throughout time, just the villa. All right, let's imagine a villa. Basically, what that is, it's a house with a fenced in yard, and the yard is a garden. In most cultures, you grew food there, or herbs and spices, and in some cultures, you made something scenic, like a rock garden. The Japanese made villas, the ancient Greeks made villas, the Mesopotamians made villas, the Egyptians made villas. Everybody made villas. It's because that's one of the most efficient forms of housing, if not the most efficient. I mean, you've made your house, no matter where these villas are, you can see that they're built out of the terrain around them. With the exception of the Romans, they didn't always get stone from the immediate area. Sometimes they were set in their ways and wanted a specific type of stone for a specific type of building. It absolutely had to be that way, or the heavens and the stars would just fall to the ground and crush everyone. Or so they thought. Is what a cone. Sorry, that one missed one type. That a cone, not being rude. So I'm wondering what cone, although I'll read it when it pops up if that one missed one types it. The situation that we have with castles. Castles were royal fortifications. This was meant as somebody's household, and it also contained a church. In Roman days, they had four walls, and basically they would, every night at the end of their march, they would dig a square trench, and all of the dirt that they were pulling up, they would throw towards the inside. They would cut the sod and set it to the side, and then once the thing was built, they would march over the top of it to compact it, and then they would lay the sod against it. If anybody tried to run up the fortification, they would slip on the grass and go right back down into the, basically it's a moat, but there's no water in it unless it rains. And inside of that would have been rows and rows of tents, and in the very center of it would have been the Principia or Principia. Basically, you've got those of you who've gotten the British schools, your headmaster's office, basically. You know, this is where all of the important stuff is taken care of and the important decision making is, and this is where the guy who's in charge is, and it's usually right square in the center. If we as a society can get over this obsession with having more than everyone else and allowing people to have more than they could ever possibly need, there's no reason for people to take those resources. I mean, you guys make fun of people who hoard newspapers in their house. They got a whole house that's stacked top to bottom with newspapers, and you make fun of them and say that they have a sickness. But do we say that they have a sickness when it's money, when it's land, when it's power, when it's human lives? And that's what we're dealing with right now. But the other thing to look at is that it's nothing new. There are times in human past where we have lived wonderful, wonderful lives. And it took evil people with civilization to destroy that. Now we can have the parts that we need. We don't need complete government control over every single person, especially when the government control is not under control. Briones Law, that's hopefully going to force police officers in Louisville, Kentucky, or Louisville, I don't know how to pronounce it, to wear body cameras and have them on before and after the situation, and every point in between. And there will be consequences for those officers turning it off. That prevents officers from doing the things that they did to me through all of this. This needs to go nationwide. Instead of bickering over which color of skin is the most evil, or which has been the most evil throughout history. Instead of going, oh, well, you know, in recent history, it's these ones, but in more recent history, it's these ones, and in the past, it was these ones. You know what? We're all a bunch of screw-ups. We're all mutts. Nobody's purebred anything, and if you want to claim purebred, fine, you're inbred. Fucking take that to the bank. That's gross. And those of you who happen to be inbred, I am sorry about that. It's not your fault that you were born under those conditions, and you are still a human being. And the less throughout your history that happens, the less likely it is that you're going to get a lot of the diseases that the Romanovs ended up with. If y'all know anything about the fall of the Russian Tsar Nicholas, that whole thing was over his son having a nosebleed that wouldn't stop. I keep having bugs land on my head and it makes me itchy. What we're dealing with today is not even close to anything that we should have to worry about, except that unlike in the past, the people are not prepared for this. The people are too cowardly and too afraid to stand up to their own government. We the people does not mean we the people. Those three words were replaced by money, money, money. Our jail systems are set up to make money, money, money. Off of who? The most victimized people in America. Foster children. You make a mint off the foster care system, and then you drop them off with nothing. and then you persecute them for having nothing. And people just don't understand that you're being persecuted. You're broke because of the constant persecution. You didn't choose this. And people say, oh, well, you're 18. Everything should be fine and dandy now. No, when you were 18, you had a lot more resources. I guarantee you that in most cases. Did you know how to drive at 18? Did you have a vehicle at 18? Did you have a job at 18? Did you have support at 18? And those of you who say no, really take a look back, really think about it. Your first summer job, the one that you go bragging about how you got your first car at 6 because of your summer job. Did you have to feed your little brother and sister at the time? But all throughout history, it's the big guy stomping on the little guy. And we just can't have that anymore. There are too many people suffering and too many people looking away because it's not happening to them. And then when it does happen to them, they want to throw tantrums. These people who want to run around saying, oh, these people are throwing tantrums and these people are throwing tantrums. Then it happens to them. And what do? The first thing they do is throw a tantrum. What do I have to do? I have to remain calm at all points in time, no matter what. Or I will be slammed to the floor, dragged and hauled off and injected with drugs. That's not acceptable. And that is what I am trying to fight. That is just a small part of what I am trying to fight. I'm also trying to fight against the institution, Clearview, that killed two people that would be alive if the police had listened to me, but they outright refused. No matter what, no matter where I was at, the police refused. Now, here recently, the police want to put on a show and play pretend. But I've already been through it with these officers, and it's pathetic that I have to go to these officers. I've tried to go elsewhere. I've tried to go to the FBI. I've tried to go to the State Patrol. Nobody's going to investigate this. It's nobody's job. When it comes to mandated reporters, it's magically not their job either. And see, at least the conversation with Jen Beebe, the last one that I had with her, you get to see that she admits that she spoke out of place. The things that she told me there in Scottsbluff, while I was telling her about the abuse that I was enduring in Scottsbluff. Hey, this is what I am going through here. But you know what to expect when you've lived through it. I mean, for a lot of these black families, seeing their loved ones shot on national fucking TV. Yeah, what are they teaching their kids? They used to be able to teach them, hey, keep your hands on the wheel. Don't make any sudden movements. If all of your white friends run away, you can't. You have to stay there. Or they will shoot you. But now you can't even stay there. And a whole bunch of racists want to be on the side of the cops. I got so many people that are on the side of the cops just because they don't like black people. They don't like Black Lives Matters. They don't like the fact that they're having to go through stuff, and it's easy for them to pick on Black Lives Matters. This is not a race thing. It's a poverty issue. It is an ease of victimization for profit issue. Most of these black folk who are incarcerated got a lot in common with most of those folks who are incarcerated who are white, and most of those folks who are incarcerated who are Asian, and most of those folks who are incarcerated from any other group. Do you know why? Because the largest cross section of the jail and prison population is former foster children. When you force somebody into a desperate situation, and the rules aren't the same as they are for everyone else, You're asking for trouble. You're asking for people to fight back. Why? Because you're harming them. This isn't civilized. Not even close. And I'm not talking about the so-called riots, because these are not riots. The Boulder riot, when the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup, Boulder rioted. There were college kids lighting couches on fire and throwing them out of windows. That was more of a riot than any of these individual singular incidents. Now, aren't they? Now, then there's those of you who want to blame all black people for this violence, as if all black people are violent. That's why you're racist. That is why you're racist, because you believe that it's all black people. Like all black people are taking part in this, and it's only black people. And when I was looking at that footage, what am I seeing? I'm seeing mostly white people doing the damage. The people that I see coming back and doing it repeatedly are mostly white people. Yeah, white people are fed up too. So why don't we just stop this black and white bullshit and go, people are people. People are fed up with this shit. There's a lot of people I know who their rule is you never talk to the police. And that's a lot of people's rule. And there's a fucking reason for it. And they complain about how terrible the police are all the fucking time. But then when shit like this happens to black persons, well, they no longer have a connection to it because they're not black. And then all of a sudden it's not their issue, it's not their problem, and these black people just need to shut up in their opinion. No. Why am I saying that it is absolutely all right for black people to do these things? Look at what I've been doing. I have not been doing different shit. I tried the peaceful route for years. My friends are still in the ground. I tried to educate for years. My friends are still in the ground. I tried to show people another way for years. My friends are still in the ground. And more of them go in there all the time. I'm sick of this. Briona's Law, that's not just for black people. That's what I want you guys to understand the most. All right? Enough of this Africans are this and black people are that. No. Enough of this white people are this and these people are doing this. No. None of that. People get desperate and they do desperate shit. You work together, you're not going to get desperate. Many hands make for light work. I'm sure most of y'all who have worked construction have worked jobs where there were things that you could not have done by yourself. We the people of the United States means we the people. Currently, it's we the oppressed and those lucky enough to only be marginally because they're able to borrow and borrow more and more and more and more. And you've got your credit. And when your credit runs out, you're going to end up with a lot of other people. But yeah, make America great again or whatever. Let's build a wall and stuff, right? Let's house a bunch of children in cages like they're fucking animals, right? Just because they're brown skinned. I mean, look at it is who it is that's being targeted. When I was on the bus from California to Bristol, Tennessee, we got stopped through a immigration checkpoint. We had foreign people on the bus who hardly spoke English, who were white. They weren't spoken to. Matter of fact, there's a video right here on this YouTube about that situation. Matter of fact, I made that while those officers were walking through the bus. The Constitution is entirely flawed, of course, but it can be changed. It can be adapted. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution should not be there. That's the amendment that makes it legal today to enslave people. I want you to look that up. The Second Amendment is supposed to protect the First Amendment, and we don't have the First Amendment. So obviously it is not entire and complete. We live in the land of censorship. What you can and cannot say, what you can or cannot show, whose evidence is valid and whose hearsay is valid. Well, people were sending me pictures of actual firearms telling me they were going to kill me and my family. Yeah, you know what I did? I bought a 98-cent squirt pistol at Walmart and I filled it with jalapeno juice for my own protection. And then after Miss Shelley and her goons got busted lying, well, that's when fucking shit really hit the fan. Oh my God, Natalie's family is just a bunch of fucked up bastards. I think them and my mom should share a cell. Anyway, we don't have to live in houses that are made out of compressed crap. We don't have to live in places with nasty shit like, well, y'all know that pink fiberglass insulation. Why would you want that in your house? Every time that there's a tiny crack that opens up in your house, it starts blowing through that stuff. That starts blowing into the house. You're breathing it. Now you got fiberglass in your lungs. Congratulations, you're a dumbass. Dirt works better. And if you build your house out of dirt, you can still finish it on the interior however the hell you want. And you don't have to have mortar. If you got a bunch of rocks, you can stack the rocks into a house, especially if they're flat stone. And depending on how inventive you want to get with the way that you're stacking it, you probably won't need to use that much rock. You'll be able to control with the way that you set the rock shales on top of each other where the water is going to flow when it rains on your structure. And then you can control what plants that you want to grow on top of it. It doesn't have to be like the Scottish did. A villa doesn't have to have wooden walls with rice paper doors like the Japanese used. It doesn't have to have a wooden rampart and barricade like a Western fort. It doesn't need to be made out of stone like like the Romans did. It doesn't need to be made out of bricks like the Greeks did. It doesn't need to be made out of dirt like the Egyptians did. It can be made out of any of them. And the other thing is, a lot of people are like, well, what about electricity? Dude, if they can put electricity through a mountain, then yes, you can put electricity in your house, whether it's made of dirt or wood or stone or whatever. Yes, you can do it, especially if you were building your house specifically to have electricity. but we're not going to achieve any sort of anything close to a utopian society enough for us to be invading other countries and telling them what to do if we can't work together. And we got a lot of folks out there taking situations that are not racist and trying to twist them into hatred and discontent. And when you see this stuff where they go, well, we're fact checking, well, they never fact check this stuff, do they? Because that picture where they were trying to say that it was two KKK guys with military style rifles there specifically to kill black people. But I've got the whole picture. There's two black people in the picture, too. Matter of fact, there's actually 3 white guys with guns and 3 black people with guns. There's a white guy and a black guy at the door, each with guns. They're protecting local businesses. They're not shooting at people. Just the fact that they are there is deterrent. But then again, the police are no longer deterrent. They're not. The police are antagonists. The third way to fight a war, my favorite, is through construction, and that's what I'm working on now.